Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our next session at the Data Science Festival. We're going to be hearing from Antton Pena and Rayno Mostert at Flock about building a real-time motor accident risk model. Antton is the founder of Flock, which is a London-based insurtech company specializing in autonomous and connected vehicles. Anton's background is engineering, design, product development, with extensive industry experience in transportation. Having worked for Audi and Seat, he's now working at Imperial College in academia. And while he was there, he's established Flock to provide a mechanism to integrate connected and autonomous transportation into society in a safe way. Rayno is one of their actuarial support data scientists. His background is actuarial science and computer science, and he originally specialized in actuary in South Africa. Currently, he's working on the pricing modules for Flock. Over to Antton.
Thank you, Charles, and hello, everyone. Thanks for choosing us. I know it was a hard choice, and there were some amazing talks out there, so thanks for being here. So, I just introduced, I'm Antton, Flock's founder and chief product officer, but I work closely with Rayno in daily basis. This is a first for us. We've never done a virtual, like a hybrid talk like this, so bear with us if you've got questions, and we can answer them in real time. But I think we'll figure them out. So I just want to give you a quick introduction to Flockace before Rayno really dives into the detail of how everything works under the hoods. The reason why we exist is because we believe that mobility is changing faster and faster than ever. We see new vehicles coming into the market. They're all connected, they're autonomous, and the shape of them is totally different. We see anything from drones to fully connected and electric vehicles to self-driving cars to flying taxis even. So this is painting the picture of what we see out there in a way. This is unlocking a number of totally new business models. No one could have imagined Uber 10 years ago, right? Like 10 years ago, vehicles weren't connected, and those at home completely missed this, but hopefully they can catch us up quickly. So 10 years ago, we couldn't imagine something like Uber existing. Zipcar couldn't be a thing because these vehicles weren't connected. We were just understanding what iPhones were in our lives, and things like Amazon or DPD delivering real-time updates on where our parcel was in a road in London were unconceivable. 10 years later, we're totally used to these habits, and the world is clearly changing around us. But the truth is that even if there were a ton of colorful pictures there, insurance still looks black and white, right? It's struggling to keep up. The policies we were selling 50 years ago are very similar to the policies we sell nowadays, or the insurance industry sells nowadays, and we really feel that it requires a little bit of a change. So, and the truth is that these policies are designed to transfer the risk, is a word the insurance industry loves using. It's all about taking your risk and giving it to someone else, which is the insurance company, and paying them for it. But when it really comes to safety, all we do is just cross our fingers and hope that nothing goes wrong, and if something goes wrong, hope that the insurance company pays the claim. So this is not a small problem, especially in the world we operate in, which is in the fleet space. Our customers pay around 25% of their operational costs to insurance policies. So this is something that's definitely top of mind. It is not a side thing they do in daily basis. They're constantly thinking about how safety and the insurance component is going to affect their ability to run the fleet. So in a changing world where insurers can't keep up, that's where Flock comes in, and this is why we launched Flock. Imagine a company that doesn't just pay claims and is there to be your safety partner in a way. It's there to help you understand what risks you're undertaking and work with you to reduce them, and of course, deliver a way more competitive policy to you. So that's Flock. This is our, if Rayno shows me our logo, there we go. So that's us. If we keep going, Rayno. So what we do is deliver an up-to-date, completely digital experience around fleet insurance. First, we start with flexible pricing. We believe that we have to adapt to the way our customers operate and run their business, not the other way around. So we adapt our pricing models to theirs. They can pay per mile, per day, per month, however their business works, we adapt to them. We then offer a completely digital experience on top of these policies that enable them to be in control of their policies. They don't have to be phoning us. They don't have to be phoning their broker. They can make any changes, add any vehicles as they go, as necessary. And finally, the third value proposition we bring in is around proactively helping them manage the risk. And we use a lot of the data we'll dive into in a second to understand what risks our customers are undertaking and help them mitigate that over time. We've got thousands of vehicles on our books now. We insure thousands of vehicles from some well-known brands. Elmo, which is a newcomer into the market, but it's really a really cool company we really like, and they're becoming very big very quickly. They're an electric vehicle subscription company, so you can go on their website, order an electric vehicle, pay for the month. Everything is included in the package, from energy to the charging station to the vehicle itself, and of course insurance, and you just get delivered a vehicle to your house. Virtuo, which is a short-term hire service where you can take your phone app out, go to their app, order a vehicle and drive it in central London. And then Jaguar Land Rover, who has a number of innovative fleets now. We insure one called the Out, where you can order a luxury vehicle for the weekend. If you're doing a nice weekend trip or road trip, you can go onto their app, order the vehicle, they deliver the vehicle to your house, you use it for the weekend, and they collect it back on Sunday. And again, the insurance experience behind this is completely seamless because we're able to connect to these vehicles and switch it on or off as they're used to. But let's take a look at how all of this works and how we're able to unlock this. Cars nowadays are supercomputers on wheels. There we go. They're constantly emitting data. They're connected to the internet, and they often know way more than the driver knows about the car itself. It's not just about cars. It is also about the surrounding. We can get hold of weather data in real time. Highways are telling us how traffic's looking like in the roads. We've got a number of connected points of interest around the surroundings where we drive as well. So what we do is take all of this data and crunch it through what we call a risk engine. We look at hyperlocal weather data, the data that comes from the vehicle itself, location data to understand the surrounding of where the driver is driving, and we then augment that with customer data we've collected from our customers, and also historical data about the claims that we've had in the past, things like frauds or crime data that help us understand or predict what could happen in the future. So this is the high level understanding of the data we use to come up with that risk score, we call it, which is a number from 0 to 100 that helps us and our customers understand what risk is. We can do this at per second level and per mile level. Let's go to the next slide, Rayno. We can achieve this at per second and per meter level, and we can be delivering these risk scores as you drive, or we can deliver this risk score for the driver or for the vehicle or for the total fleet. So we're constantly understanding at different levels or layers what risk looks like. What this enables us to do is to deliver a very accurate price to our customers. They're only paying for the risk they're undertaking when they're using those vehicles, and this obviously delivers on a big cost saving. But this is the delivery to the customer. This is what customers receive from us. But today, the cool stuff is the stuff that Rayno is going to talk us through, how we achieve all of these, the data sources we use for that, which is not an easy task. So, Rayno, the floor is yours. Take us on a journey. We can't hear you, Rayno, but we will in a second. Let's try it again. Is that me? Let's keep trying, Rayno. I cannot tell you this story. Rayno's going to tell you, so we might have to wrap it up here. Is it a decimeter? Try now, Rayno. I promise it was working yesterday when we tried it.
Me right?
Oh, I think we just heard. Yes, nice. We've got you, Rayno.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Right. Thanks, Antton, for the intro. Let me know if the connection is unstable. I'll be taking you through Flock's motor risk model, how it works, and how we got to where we are. So Flock's motor risk model essentially started by looking at why accidents happen. So we started with this core data set, which is the motivation behind most of what we do, which is why accidents happen. Now, when looking at this chart, the main thing to notice is that accidents really happen due to human error. It happens due to drivers being distracted, not looking when they make a turn, or just simply behavior and experience. And this, to be honest, as an insurance company, is slightly disheartening, because if you think about error or reaction, compared to something like driver aggression, it's not quite as easy to measure. So the main reasons accidents happen are because drivers don't look properly. They fail to judge what's going on the road, and sometimes they just make actuation errors. They make poor maneuvers. And as an insurance company where we want to incentivize customers, like we want to do two things. We want to incentivize customers to be safer, but we also want to get a good view of how safe or how likely a particular customer is to claim. So we don't have like this core. We didn't have this core metric that we could point to, like, for example, what telemetry providers often point to, which is harsh braking measurements. The reality is that the reasons behind accidents are much more complex than that. So initially, this was slightly disheartening. But you need to put it into context, which is that the environment around which you drive is very indicative of whether you'll have claims or not. And this is because those errors that you make, that when you lose focus, when you're not losing properly, tend to matter more in certain situations compared to others. Right, so here's a very good example. These two segments are both 1 mile long. The top will take you a minute to drive, and the bottom section, on an average day in London, will take you anything from 6 to 16 minutes. And comparing those two, you can see how the complexity of the road and the importance of focus makes a massive difference. On the bottom one, you have a complex environment with pedestrians trying to cross over. You have numerous junctions and a whole host of obstacles in the environment that you're interacting with. And hitting a pedestrian is way more likely on something like Oxford Street. Right, so the way we looked at this was looking at a core data set, which is every recorded accident in the UK as recorded by the UK police. So this is about 10 years worth of accident data. And it contains a whole host of features on every accident as well, like the time and the weather conditions, as well as who was involved in the accident, how badly they were injured, what type of vehicles were involved, and what the driver profile was. And this map really underlies our understanding of risk. So what we did is we wanted to get to a risk score for every environment, and essentially every road segment, so that we could understand how different parts of the road compare in riskiness to others. So what we did is we took each of these accidents and mapped them onto a road segment. So split the UK road network into little small segments and allocated each of these accidents to each one. And then we have a profile for that particular road segment. Like here on this segment in Oxford Street, we know, for example, that there are 74 accidents per year on average, and 30% of those might involve pedestrians. And we'll keep accumulating data year on year and adjust our understanding of the accident count on that road segment by updating it every year. Right, so this gives us an accident count. But if we think about risk, the number of accidents is only half of the picture, right? Because we want to understand what the probability is that you'll be in an accident. So we need to understand the number of accidents per vehicle using that road segment. Or more completely, we want to understand the probability of having an accident per kilometer driven, which is essentially just the number of accidents that happen on that road segment divided by the number of vehicle kilometers driven on that road segment. So looking at this equation, there's a core component missing, which is an understanding of traffic. So we need to understand how different roads compare to each other with regards to how vehicles use those roads and how many vehicles use those roads and at what times, because only then will we really be able to understand the riskiness per vehicle on every road segment. However, traffic data is quite broken and scarce. So this is what traffic data looks like for Oxford, for example. You have traffic counters placed on certain areas. And in the UK, especially for small towns, these are often manual counts. There are exceptions like highways that have automatic traffic counters. But by and large, traffic counts in the UK are reported very infrequently. They lie far apart, and it's really difficult to infer what happens on the rest of the road network. So you have this very fragmented view of traffic. So we set out to solve this just because traffic is so core to our understanding of risk. But it's not quite as simple as just extending traffic across the road segment, because you don't necessarily know how many people turned off at the next junction or how many people use the smaller roads. So the way we solved this was by using simulation techniques. So as an example, I'll show you what happens in Oxford. So what we'll do is we'll choose random properties within the area of interest, and we'll simulate routes between them. And then we can calibrate those routes in such a way, so we can pick from those randomly selected routes in such a way that it matches what we see in real life. So we can look at what we have from the Department of Transport and from traffic data, and then compare that to the simulation and actually fit the simulation so that it presents something that closely reflects reality. So here you can see every single vehicle route that we've simulated. The colors of the vehicle just indicate their speed, red being a dead standstill. And you can see how the simulation offers us a realistic view of how different parts of the road network might be used. We run this a bunch of times, and we end up with essentially a filled-in map. So on the left, we have the observed data, and on the right is what happens when we simulate for the whole area, and we can get an understanding how every road segment, how the traffic on every road segment differs. Just for interest, this simulation on the right was calibrated to the Department for Transport data, but we also run this just randomly, so not using external data sets and just seeing which vehicles end up being the most busiest. And there's actually a striking similarity between what would happen in a completely randomized world on the road network versus what happens in real life, which is just a stark reminder that we're all random actors if you zoom out a bit. Right, so now we have an understanding of traffic. We can fill in every road segment and color in traffic in such a way that we understand how many vehicles are using every road segment, and we can fill in our equation of risk. So whenever we have some telemetry, which are GPS devices that we put in every vehicle insured by Flock, those vehicles then report on their location as they move about. We can compare the roads that are used by the device against our understanding of risk. And we can do this both for accidents to get an accident count and for traffic to get an understanding of how many vehicles actually use that road segment. And then what we end up with is an understanding of what the risky parts are of an insured's like driving history. But we also understand how different customers' risk profiles might differ just because of the types of routes that they use on a daily basis. So we're not just looking at mileage, we're also looking at the types of routes you often do and how those might contribute to risk. Right, so this seems good. We have an understanding of risk that's based on some historical data, and we can do this segment by segment. So we have a very granular understanding of risk as a vehicle drives along a route. But there are some shortcomings. And those shortcomings really became clear over the last year, which is that, and this is true for any model that you train on historical data, it's a reflection of the data that it was trained on. So our model is a reflection of the last 10 years worth of accident data, and we can weight it in smart ways so that it places more weight on more recent history, but effectively it's a representation of history. And like recently we're seeing that things, especially when it comes to mobility, are changing so quickly that representation is not necessarily as accurate. So the historical accident data doesn't reflect the massive increase in cyclists that London has seen. It doesn't reflect the decrease in speed limits that we see across London. And it also doesn't incorporate the way that the actual road network is changing, how the ULEZ, like the taxes that are being charged with the emission zone, affect the way in which roads are being used, as well as how low traffic neighborhoods might be affecting traffic on certain routes. So, and this is shortcomings of public data, but often data sets in general and training data on historical data sets, which is that you get relatively infrequent updates. This data is mainly provided by the government. You get it a few months late. It's backwards looking. It's not particularly scalable. We can't scale this to areas in which we don't have accident data. The UK is particularly good at reporting on accidents, but very few other countries are as open with their data or as good at capturing it. It's also error prone, and quite simply, there's not enough of it. So if we have a very quiet segment of road that has never seen an accident, we need some way of calculating an accident rate for that road segment in a realistic way. Just because an accident hasn't happened there in the last 10 years doesn't mean that your probability of having an accident on that road segment is 0. It just means that we don't have enough data yet. So can we do better? And we asked this by going back to the very first chart that we looked at. Why do accidents happen? And we'll take out everything that doesn't involve human error. And we see that the vast majority is due to human error, and we can bucket the types of errors that humans make into 4 types, mainly perception errors. You don't see the vehicle coming. Processing errors, you see the vehicle, but you misjudge its path or its speed. Actuation errors, which is where you just make a wrong turn or you step on the wrong pedal. And lastly, impatience. And then we can ask ourselves, well, can we model these? So if we have a simulation model and we're simulating all of these routes and these vehicles traveling from different points throughout a city, can we introduce these errors into that model? And what does that look like? And the answer is we can. So if we add some error to the the model itself and analyze where accidents happen, accidents tend to happen at areas that you'd expect. They happen in areas with high complexity, like junctions and on-ramps. And what's striking is the correlation between what we see in the real world. So we can see that introducing error into a simulation model can produce accidents that look very similar to what we see in the real world. Right, and this is essentially what a simulation looks like. So here we're looking at a roundabout in London. This is Wellington Arch. So you'll see Green Park on the right, the Buckingham Palace Gardens down on the bottom right, and then Hyde Park on the top left. Sorry, Green Park on the top right. And if you take a look at the simulation, you can see the movement of vehicles inside, but also buses, and buses will stop at the designated bus route. And we can also model like the influence of public transport. In addition to this, we can introduce cyclists and pedestrians to analyze the effects of that on the road network as well. And all of this can feed in to our understanding of where accidents happen, who they might involve, and how severe they might be when they happen. Right. So from this risk map, where we have this risk score and this understanding of risk for every road segment, we really want to be converting that map into a score based on where our customers actually drive. So here we can see that same segment on Oxford Street. And let's say we have this particular segment where we have a few statistics, like there might be 84 accidents per million miles driven and a high likelihood of pedestrian involvement. We then see some telemetry. So one of our customers took this particular route. We can also measure like particular factors about how they were driving and have that affect the base accident rate that they would see when driving on that route. So for this one, for example, we might see a risk score which translates to an increase over the base accident frequency for that road. And what this allows us to do is for every trip that a customer takes, we can derive a risk score, but also a very accurate premium that correlates directly to, based on historical data, based on our simulation, what we would expect claims to look like for that particular vehicle. So we're moving from a world where we use very simple factors about you, like your credit score and your age, which is genuinely what insurers use when you apply for an insurance product, to a world where we can granularly look at every trip you do, look at how you're driving and where you're driving, and have that influence your premium, which in our view opens up a whole host of new possibilities in insurance and insurance products.
And I'll take us back to the customer's worlds now. Like, all of that technology would do nothing if it couldn't deliver value back to the customer. And sometimes everything Rayno talks about is borderline scary as well, right? So our job is to make sure that we use all of that intelligence to move from a world where we're completely reactive to accidents and insurance companies are there to pay for claims, to a world where we can be very proactive about safety. And we can help our customers not just save money, but also reduce the risks they're undertaking. So the first thing we do with all of that technology is extract a ton of insights from what the customer is doing, from how our customers or their drivers are driving, and deliver them back to them. We've got a few examples here. We, for example, analyzed 100 vehicle fleets, where we plotted risk on a graph. And we can see how each vehicle, most vehicles, contribute to a similar level of risk, but there are a few that are outliers there, and we highlighted them, right? So you very quickly see that there are a few drivers that are contributing to a disproportionate amount of risk to the fleet. And the customer doesn't know that. So we go back to them and tell them, look, 5% of your drivers are actually contributing to 23% of your risk and of course, therefore, premium or cost as well, right? So as soon as you sit down with that customer and help them understand what's going on, they become equipped to proactively start managing risk. If we keep diving into this data, we even took one of the 5 drivers there, we analyzed their pattern and compared them to the pattern of the rest of the drivers. On the right-hand side, sorry, my right, on your left-hand side, you can see a normal commercial customers, individual customers driving pattern, right? That's how they usually use their vehicle when they rent a vehicle for personal use. But we identify how there was a customer that had a totally different pattern, which is the one you've got on the right-hand side, that led us to believe that they were using a car rented for personal use as a delivery mechanism. So they were actually making deliveries on a car they were renting from a personal car company, right? So as soon as we put that in front of the customer can then decide what to do about it. They might allow it, they might not allow it, but their contribution to risk is much, much higher. We've got another example here where we can take that even farther and start delivering insights at trip level, right? So we can see 2 trips in central London that go from the same point A to the same point B. The difference in time is just 1 minute, but the contribution to risk is double on the original trip, and it could have been optimized to half, right? So we've got an 8.1 probability of severe accidents out of 1 million miles driven, and on the left-hand side, which is the safest path, we've got a 4.0 over 1 million miles driven of probability of having a severe accident. So there's real value we can deliver at the back of these technologies if delivered in the right way to our customers. On top of helping customers understand risk, we reward safety. Because we're able to now price in per mile basis, as we see they're reducing that risk, they end up generating cost benefit as well. So we don't just exist to help them be safer, we also generate a financial benefit at the back of it. And finally, we wrap all of this into a beautifully designed digital tool so customers can see all these insights in real time, can log into a portal, and consume all of this to help fleets be safer and pay less. So again, our value propositions to our customers are all about being more flexible, being fully digital, and proactively helping them be safer. So we move from that fingers crossed emoji we saw before, where we're just insuring vehicles and hoping everything is going to go well, to a world where we're using data to really understand what's happening, to be proactive about it, and overall save money as well. And this takes us well on our journey of delivering on our mission of making the world a safer, smarter place, which is what we say why we started Flock. So final slide, I promise. I know all of you are dying to go and have some food. We're hiring like crazy. We celebrated our Series A this week, which means that we're going to more than double the team in the next year. We're 42 now. We'll probably go to 80. We're hiring a ton across the board, but especially around technology and data science. So if this is a space that excites you, you've got our contacts there. Difficult questions to Rayno. Anything else, you can send it to me. But yeah, we'd love to see your CVs in our inboxes. And we'll probably stop here.
Right. Thanks, Antton and Rayno. As he highlighted, there's a risk you'll miss lunch if you ask too many questions. But let's start with a couple of questions. Anybody got one? Right.
I've just got a couple of questions, which I think are connected. So one is, it's a big model, right? How do you scale? How do you manage to kind of scale that? Is that a problem for you or not? And the second one, I guess, is it's all around this fantastic model you've created. How are you validating that, and how are you making sure that it's...
Okay. 2 questions there. One about scaling the model, and the second about validation.
Do you get those, Rayno?
I did not. Could you maybe repeat?
So the first question was, there's a ton of data here. How do we make sure it scales?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the entire point behind simulation and why we've tried to focus on simulation, right? We're a young, ambitious startup, and we want to be able to grow to new territories without having the constraint of not possibly being able to find data sets in these new territories. So by understanding the propensity with which drivers make those 4 types of errors that I mentioned, we can understand how the environment might actually contribute to their risk. So ultimately, we're trying to have a core simulation model that understands how people make errors in certain scenarios, and that we can scale to anywhere where we have a map.
And the second question was, how do we validate it? Right.
So in turn, it's like we have a few data sets to validate it on. The first is the actual accident data set. So you can obviously have a holdout set from there. And the second is claims data. So we now have all of these connected vehicles. We have their claims. So constantly we're able to use those claims to understand where accidents are most likely to happen. But in our case, like from claims, it's way more important to understand how big the claim might be when it actually happens. So it often helps with our severity models more than it does with frequency. But yeah, claims data is typically used in validation.
I'll add something very quick to that. We're in a very unfair position compared to many other players in this space. And it's that you often get technology companies crunching data and trying to deliver safety insights to customers. And then in the other end, the insurance companies that are the ones that pay claims. We do both, right? So we're the ones that pay claims. We know how much an accident costs, but at the same time delivering on the intelligence, and that's what creates a little bit of an unfair advantage.
I'll just follow up on the second one of those questions. The police data set that you're using for your initial data is clearly going to underrepresent the lowest severity accidents. Are you starting to see that difference and be able to quantify it?
A question Rayno will love to answer.
Cool. Could you just repeat that? Sorry, it was not clear.
So the police data set is going to underrepresent the lowest severity accidents because people will manage them themselves. Are you starting to be able to actually quantify that and modify your model?
Yeah, so like lower severity accidents where the police don't get involved are underrepresented in that data set. The way we corrected for that was essentially by looking at industry data and scaling up the accidents that we did see. Now that we're able to, now that we're getting in claims data and growing up our book, we're able to actually see where these accidents happen, but they are highly correlated with the accidents that we do see in the accident data set. So like personally, I think we'll probably continue with the approach where we're basing our methodology on this accident data set and able to scale that up for the lower severity accidents.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for incredible presentation. My question is, this kind of very precise and granular risk modeling, how does this affect the financials and the bottom line of insurance carriers that you sell the technology to?
Yeah.
So
right. So
just repeat the question. So it's about whether the granularity of the data affects the financials.
Yeah. So the first thing to note is that motor insurance is an incredibly competitive industry. If you look at the combined ratio, which is basically if you add up all the expenses incurred in selling a policy, and you look at the amount that's left for the insurer as profit, that combined ratio, it sits in commercial motor, sits at around 96 to 97%. So you're sitting with a profit margin of like 2 to 3% based on the premium that you're making. So if you're able to identify risky drivers that a customer is unaware of or that is against their own policy, just making a minor inquiry or just improving the claims experience slightly can double the profit margin on that book, right? Because you're dealing with such a small profit margin that reducing claims by 3 or 4% can double your the combined ratio on the book.
And we can't disclose specific numbers here, but the data, we've been in motor for around 9 months now. The data we've got so far dramatically improves these loss ratios. I think it is important to then tie that back to how the customer sees that, because it feels like we're here to just make the insurance company behind us more money. The truth is that the less the insurance company pays in claims, the cheaper the price to the customer is, right? So we operate in a constant flywheel scenario where by helping some stakeholders, we're eventually actually helping the customer. We start by doing it with insights, but then we do it by delivering cheaper prices as well.
Yeah, just to expand on that. Sorry, Antton. Just to expand on that. So whenever in commercial motor, whenever you get a new policy, your policy is priced, at least traditionally, based on your claims experience in the previous year. So like 2 companies that do exactly the same thing can often pay 3 times to 4 times more in insurance just because their claims experience is bad. So by improving their claims experience, you can make a massive difference to the premium they pay in future. So.
Thanks. So I very much loved the idea of attributing risk to the road segment, not just to people, because that's quite novel and a lot of like ethical stuff. The short question is, in which geographies you operate, and that's the second one is why I'm asking, because I see a lot of possibilities for like influencing on public policy in this, because like a lot of the like transport ideas like Vision Zero come from that. The road segments and the way we design the environment affects how people actually drive in it. And so is there this kind of opportunity, and maybe if you have some clients which are basically cities asking like, what's your risk score for our city and like a specific region, so that you could possibly help us redesign it?
So basically, where is Flock operating at the moment, and are you closing the loop back to the design of roads based on the accident data?
So first question, we currently operate in the UK only. Motor is one of the 2 markets we operate in. We started with drone insurance, which was way more flashy in a way. That product is offered across Europe. We do very similar analysis in that product, but we're able to do it in other countries. This is slightly newer, so we keep it to UK for now. We would love to help anyone we can with this data and this analysis. We're a relatively tiny team, so we have to pick our battles very, very quickly. In the drone space, we've done a ton of this. We've helped policymakers. The motor space is much better defined, so the end barrier to entry is slightly higher. But if you know anyone we can help, definitely let us know.
Yeah,
one last.
Just to add to that, the software and the tools that we're using to do this come from industrial engineers. So initially, this was built as an analytics tool for infrastructure. We are just applying it to insurance. So we'd love to feed back, but from the get-go, the software was designed for the analytics of the environment. Hopefully, we can in future be able to bring a risk element to that.
I think we had one last question over here somewhere, unless it's been answered.
How are you, obviously with exposure data, it can help your claims modelling and things like that, but are you targeting this as a certain type of customer? Because how do you keep your sort of exposure balanced? You know, because it seems like quite high value vehicles are your customers, and you drive those differently, I'd say.
She clearly works in insurance based on those words. Very good question. So right now we've got 3 sub-segments: self-drive hire, trade, and courier. Those are the risks we specialize in. So self-drive hire is where you rent a vehicle from someone else, and that can be for a long-term or a very short-term, like Virtuo or Zipcar do. Trade is all about the electricians and the plumbers driving usually their allocated vehicle, and then courier, it's all about delivering with vehicles, right? In each of those, you've got a very different driver mindset as well, right? In some, you don't own the vehicle, so you don't care about small bumps. In others, you are an employee and you've got a lot of pressure to keep your job, for example. So we do look at these three differently, and Rayno can talk more about how we're starting to split these models and generate more intelligence in specific ways. And then, of course, the exposure data, the claims data that comes back, it can very easily be segregated as well. So it's all about the numbers you can collect. The really cool thing we do is, because we're connected to the vehicles, we're not just waiting until a claim comes back to collect data. We're collecting right now, I think the latest number was around 1.6 million miles a month. Right? So like being able to see not just what goes wrong, but what doesn't go wrong gives you a lot of competitive advantage.
Great.
Yeah, so at least from a telemetry point of view, so like looking at road risk, we don't treat them differently at the moment because it doesn't add as much value. We're interested in like what's happening on that road segment in particular. That said, when it comes to assuming how they'll drive in future and pricing a policy, the different segments differ dramatically, and even within the segments, it's sometimes really difficult to understand which group a particular client falls in. You can think about courier, for example. You have the courier that just does the last mile. You have couriers that drive between cities. Similarly with self-drive hire, you could hire a car for, you have certain companies that promote self-drive hire for weekends, and that's a very different profile to someone like Elmo, who essentially want to replace your personal vehicle at home. The types of trips you do when you are just doing a weekend trip is very different from the daily types of trips you might do commuting to work or dropping the kids at school. So we're only beginning to start understanding the difference in behavior between all of those. As of yet, at least when it comes to telemetry and understanding road risk, we're treating them all the same. But in future, we'll need to split them up.
Okay. Let's just thank Antton and Rayno again for a really great talk.